What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today's video is going to be all about the Season 4 Reloaded meta for close range. So it's not just SMGs. I've included a couple ARs here too. I made this video a few days ago, but made a couple mistakes, and then they also dropped a surprise patch. So those two things combined, I just wanted to re-upload the video and give you guys a better idea after that previous one. So we're not going to waste any time. I've got this beautiful spreadsheet that I spent about 2 days on, and we're going to talk about all this, and then at the end I'll give you guys recommended loadouts for what I think are the top builds for each type of playstyle. So let's start going through this spreadsheet. So basically what I did is I went through on TGD and used the best stat calculator that can look up any combination of attachments for whatever stat you're looking for, and I did time to kill at 7 meters and time to kill at 14 meters, and then I tried to see basically what had the best time to kill, and from there build the gun around what's required to make it a very good SMG. And the reason I do it that way is because I think time to kill is kind of super important up close, just because recoil is not as important because you're going to hit most of your shots. And there's a bunch of other factors too, but obviously I just think up close, when you both see each other and you both start shooting at the same time, it just tends to be really important that you have a better time to kill. So that's where I usually start when I'm looking at SMGs. It is important to be able to hit your shots, because sometimes you'll have your SMG out and you won't, you probably shouldn't have your SMG out and somebody just appears a little bit too far away and you just have to take those shots. So I've included time to kill up close, time to kill kind of at a little bit of a longer range for an SMG, 14 meters, and then accuracy. This is a personal thing for myself. I went in and tested all these with various different builds to see how I could make them the most accurate while still having good mobility, good ADS, good sprint to fire, good time to kill, and just kind of combine all of this into a cohesive picture of how good these guns are. I've also got magazine size information here. So we got mag size, fire time. So this is the total time in seconds that the gun will shoot if you hold down the trigger. And I feel like this is important, not just damage per mag, because sometimes damage per mag will be a little bit higher. So like these first two, AS44 Type 100, AS44 has higher damage per mag, but it has 0.3 seconds less fire time, and sometimes you can't react fast enough to let off the trigger if you're missing shots. So I think fire time is something important to consider, not just damage per mag. We got RPM. Higher RPM is always better because it just makes it so you have more forgiveness if you ever miss the target slightly. If you come back on the target, your shots will immediately be hitting rather than having to wait for the next bullet for a slower fire rate gun. We've got movement on here. These are more rankings, not actual numbers. So I kind of just ranked the builds themselves rather than, getting the actual number for the full build. And then same for ADS Strafe. But yeah, that's the explanation of all the columns in this table. But let's go through and talk about all these different guns and which ones I think stand out. So because I usually start with time to kill as my primary factor for an SMG, I've got them listed in order of best time to kill. So you can see AS44 is in first at 449 milliseconds of time to kill at 7 meters. And because it's an AR, it maintains that pretty far. I've got the range for that first drop off, so that goes out to about 24 meters, which is just insane. But obviously there's a bunch of things that hold back the AS44. It has very bad recoil, very difficult to control, very small mag and fire rate, or fire time, because it has such a high fire rate. Pretty small damage per mag. It's going to have really bad movement, really bad strafe speed, bad sprint to fire time, bad ADS time. So if you're someone who loves fast time to kill, this is going to be the king. But there's obviously a lot of downsides that make it difficult to use as an SMG. The next up, we have the Type 100 at 480 milliseconds time to kill. And then the required attachments to get these time to kills are in these columns here. So barrel, muzzle, magazine, perk, and ammo. Some of these require vital, some of them require hollow point. And these are the time to kills for the 300 health combination shot location on TGD. But yeah, so this build for the Type 100 has a 480 millisecond time to kill combination, and then also that goes out to 17.5 meters, so that's extremely long range for an SMG. The downsides, very similar to the AS44. It's going to have bad recoil, it's going to have a small mag, not very much fire time, and not very much damage per mag. It has a slower fire rate than the AS44, but it's slightly better recoil in my opinion. And then it also has better SMG traits because it is an SMG. So it's going to have better ADS, it's going to have better sprint to fire time, it's going to have better movement and ADS strafe as well. So Type 100, AS44, really the time to kill just champions. They're just insane how fast they can kill. They do have a lot of downsides that are hard to manage. So after that, we start getting into more reasonable SMGs for most people. In most cases, the AS44 and Type 100, because of those negatives that I listed, are not going to be what people are going to want to pick. So these guns are going to have bigger magazines. They're going to have just better SMG traits in general. So we've got the Armaguerra with the 315 millimeter CII barrel, C2 barrel. I don't know what it's supposed to be. Recoil booster, Kurz 72 round vital hollow point. That has a really good time to kill of 513 milliseconds. But that only goes out to 8.8 meters. But it still has a decent time to kill past that first drop. That's why I included this second TTK, because you'll see with the Marco here in a second that has a much worse drop off. So it's kind of important to consider both, because there is going to be a bunch of fights. I would say anything inside 20 meters is almost always going to be your SMG. And then occasionally there'll be somebody 30, 40 meters that you'll have to take a fight with just because you had the wrong gun out. So it's important to consider all these things, but still has a pretty good time to kill, 642 milliseconds out at 14 meters. It's less accurate. This barrel makes it pretty hard to control, combined with the recoil booster and the Kurz 72 and vital. All those things hurt the recoil, so this is still pretty inaccurate for me. I have this listed at 60%, this is just kind of an estimation. I basically launched into a game, built the guns how I would want to build them, tested out different attachments, and then shot a target that was 30 meters away, and I tried to kind of rank them based on how accurate I was with that. So this was pretty inaccurate, similar to the Type 100 and the AS44, but it does have a gigantic magazine, 72 rounds, 4.6 seconds of fire time, huge damage per mag, good forgiving RPM. It is going to have a little bit slower movement and ADS strafe than some of the other options, but overall this is a very good, fast time to kill option that's still a reasonably good SMG and reasonably usable SMG. Next up, we have the Marco with the VL barrel, recoil booster, and hollow point. This gets down to 542 millisecond time to kill, but unfortunately it only has 7 meters of range. You could take hollow point off, but that would make your time to kill slightly worse for this combination percentage shot locations. And that would give you 20% extra range, so you'd be a little bit below 10 meters of range then, probably be like 9.2 or something like that. But yeah, it's a good gun, and it has fantastic time to kill, and it's the Marco, which means it has great mobility. You'll see it's listed as #1 movement over on the right. It also has that big magazine, so it has a gigantic damage per mag. It has a lower fire rate, but still 775 is pretty high, pretty forgiving. But because it only has 7 meters of range, and then that's actually the second drop off actually happens before 14 meters, so you're getting all the way up to 774 at 14 meters. I don't think this is really a viable choice, just because the damage range is so short on this, and there's not a lot you can do to really extend that, because if you replace hollow point, then that's going to increase your time to kill. If you replace the recoil booster, that's going to also increase your time to kill. So it's an okay choice, and it works pretty well, but I just think there's some better options as far as these guns go. Next up, we have the Sten, which is a pretty big sleeper in my opinion, but it has one big downside that we'll talk about. With the rapid barrel, recoil booster, and hollow point, it has a 569 millisecond time to kill and 13 meters of range. And then it does have a drop off that's pretty significant, so it goes up to 711 milliseconds at 14 meters. But then it is quite a bit more accurate than any of the other options we've talked about so far. The Sten has very, very manageable recoil. The downside is the mag. So the mag and damage per mag is pretty small. And when you tack sprint, the magazine goes right in front of your face, so you can't see anything. And that's really makes a lot of fights difficult, because there's a lot of mobility and movement in SMG fights. So something getting in your face and make it so you can't see the target is a really big problem. If it didn't have that, I actually think the Sten would be pretty much meta. It has great time to kill, great range, good accuracy, good mobility. It's just all around very good. But honestly, that gigantic 50 round mag right in your face makes it very difficult to use in a lot of cases. Next up, we have the Armaguerra. So this is with the Imerito 550 millimeter barrel. This is the barrel that makes it have literally no recoil. So if you use this barrel with recoil booster, 72 round, and vital, you get 578 millisecond time to kill, 10 meters of range, and then it still has a good 642 millisecond time to kill at 14 meters. And you see I've listed 100% accuracy, because this is a beam. This, it feels like you're using almost like a long range AR. I've killed people 60, 70 meters with this, almost no problem. This barrel by itself helps the recoil so much that you can use vital, you can use the 72 round mag, and then still use the rest of your attachments for mobility options and still have virtually no recoil. So that's what makes this build so good. This is what I said stood out the most in the first iteration of this video, and I still agree that I think this stands out the most of every gun in the game right now for up close. It's just good everywhere. It's not going to be the best anywhere, but that's not the point. The point is to be consistent and great everywhere. Every situation, this is a very good choice. So I still think that stands out. I've included a few other options here. So the same Armaguerra, same attachments, but with the short barrel. The short barrel is the barrel that gives you crazy strafe speed. So it's going to have much better mobility. This is more of like a controller player option. PC players like it too, mouse and key, but the rotational aim assist that you get when you're using these strafe builds is very powerful as a controller player. So this would be something I would look at. With this barrel though, obviously your recoil is going to be much worse. So I've listed 75% accurate. So it's still more accurate than those really fast time to kill options for me, but definitely not great if somebody shows up 20-30 meters away and you have this gun out. It's going to be a little bit more difficult, but thankfully you're going to have that strafe speed, so you might be able to dodge some of their bullets. One thing I do want to mention, if you can't handle the recoil with the short barrel, just swap the Kerr's 72 round for the 60 round default mag. So this is the high caliber mag, so it has more recoil. Just swap that for the 60 round. I think it's 9mm. But that's the default the default magazine, and it really makes it have much less recoil than the Kerr's 72 rounds. So that's a good option there. The time to kill is not a whole lot worse. It's a little bit worse, but it's honestly not that much different. And it's still 60 rounds, so you're still gonna have good damage per mag. The fire rate's still good, and it'll actually, I think, hurt your movement a little bit less than the 72 round. So honestly, for all three of these armas, the 60 round is a great choice as well. You don't have to use the 72. They kind of trade blows in multiple ways, but overall, I think the 72 wins out a little bit if recoil is not an issue. So that's why I've listed it for all of these. Next up, we've got the M1928. It kind of appears to be a sleeper when you look at the stats, because just with the rapid barrel and recoil booster, you get 587 millisecond time to kill and 12 meters of range. And then it drops off to 705 at 14 meters. But then when you actually take this out and shoot it, the recoil is just awful. So you see this 50% accuracy. This is the least accurate gun on the whole list for me. And I tried various different builds, even using recoil attachments, and none of them really worked out. So I don't think this is really going to be a good choice for pretty much anyone. It might be okay for these iron trials that are coming out. I think it's called titanium trials. It's like 450 health, so you need a huge amount of damage per mag. So I'm thinking, Armaguerra, Blixen with the 54, and then the M1928 are all going to be really good. The Marco will be good too. It has high damage per mag, but I'll probably do a video on that specifically. But yeah, the recoil is just too bad on the M1928 to really be a good option. Then next up we have the Blixen, the Marco, and the Blixen with a different barrel. So the Bergstrom and the Johnson barrel are the two most popular barrels for the Blixen right now. The big difference is the Johnson's going to give you a lot more damage range now that they've really nerfed the range of the Blixen down. If you use the Johnson barrel, you're still going to get 15 meters of damage range and 602 millisecond time to kill. So that's really good number. Like, that's for an SMG, 15.2 meters is really good, but what it does is makes the recoil much worse. So you can see I have 75% accuracy for the Johnson barrel and then 85% for the Bergstrom. So it's one of those trade-offs, like, do you want the lower recoil so you hit more shots, or do you want the better time to kill? Because if you hit more shots, your effective time to kill is obviously going to go down. So it's something you'll have to play with and see which one feels good to you. For me personally, I am going to recommend the Johnson barrel. I think at this point, that extra 5 meters of damage range is worth it. A lot of SMG fights are going to happen between 10 and 15 meters. That's probably one of the most common ranges. So I think this barrel is going to be really good for that. So looking at this, like, the time to kill is a little bit worse, between like 90 and 50. So the fastest time to kill on this list of the gun that's not like kind of unusable or really difficult to use is the Arma up here with 513. And the ones I'm really recommending are like this Arma with the Emerito or the short barrel. Those are 578. So really, even though these are red, like, their time to kill is so close that these are all competitive. Like, anything in this range is going to be very similar time to kill. You're really not going to feel a difference in terms of how it performs there. So as far as the Blixen goes, with the other stats, mag, fire time, damage per mag is all huge with the 54 round mag. The reason it says the damage per mag is lower with the Bergstrom barrel is because I kind of did like an average across the first like 14-15 meters of damage per mag. So because it has 5 meters less range than the Johnson barrel, I gave it a lower damage per mag, because on average it is going to have lower damage per mag in most fights. RPM is a little bit lower on these three, so the Marco is at 700 and then the Blixen is at 600. Some people prefer that, but overall, typically higher fire rate's going to feel better. It's going to be more forgiving. And then all three of these have great movement. So the Blixen and the Marco have fantastic mobility. This barrel is going to slow it down a little bit compared to the other Marcos that I have on here. So that's one thing to consider. This is the Imerito Marco. So this is the low recoil barrel for the Marco. And again, this is similar to what I was saying with the Arma earlier. It's like this barrel gives it such low recoil that you can then use all your other attachments for mobility, whether you prefer ADS strafe or just regular movement and tac sprint. You can use all those other attachments for that and still have good recoil and good sprint to fire time and good time to kill and things like that. So that's kind of the power of these low recoil barrels, is that you can use all your other 8 attachment slots to build it for whatever you want it to be used for. Last up on here, I've got the Volk. So this is basically like the full strafe speed king. The Armaguerra with the short barrel and the Volk are very similar if you build them both for full strafe. The Volk obviously is an AR, so it's going to have really long damage range. It has good time to kill, 635 milliseconds, 635 at 14 meters. Obviously, that's the slowest on this list. But again, that's only 60 milliseconds. That's like one shot for something that, shoots around 600 RPM. So it's really a very small amount, but it is something to consider. And obviously, the Volk's going to have worse sprint to fire time. It's going to have worse movement. It's going to have worse ADS time. But it is pretty accurate. Good damage range, good time to kill, smaller mag, so damage per mag is pretty low, decent RPM. It's okay. It's really fun to run, but I think if you're going for a full strafe build, in most cases, it's probably going to be better just to use the Arma with the short barrel. So what from this list really stands out to me? So the AS44 Type 100 are kind of out of the running for being these top weapons just because of the small damage per mag and the bad recoil. And in the case of the AS44, it just doesn't make a very good SMG because of all the other SMG characteristics that you're looking for. Type 100 is a good gun, but for most people, it's just not going to be the choice. If you're someone that loves fast time to kill and you play a lot of solos and duos, and the 36 round mag is not going to be a problem for you, then definitely it's going to be a meta choice. Just has crazy time to kill, crazy range. And I love it personally. I even use it in trios and quads. But yeah, for most people, it's not going to be the ideal option. But you've noticed as we went through that list, the Arma keeps popping up over and over. And you have 3 really good ways to build the Arma. So you can use the 550 millimeter barrel if you want 0 recoil, and you'll still have that competitive time to kill of 578 milliseconds. If you want pretty much the best time to kill of any of the large damage per mag guns, then you use the body 315 millimeter barrel. That's right here. You get great time to kill, more damage range than the Marco, better time to kill at 14 meters as well. It's going to be a little bit worse recoil, so you might need to use some attachments to help with recoil instead of doing all mobility or something like that, like you can do with the Marco. But considering that, the Arma, with that good time to kill, the body 350 millimeter barrel, that's going to be very competitive for a lot of people. And then if you want to build it for strafe speed, it's going to have the best strafe speed in the game too. So the Arma with the short barrel has the best strafe speed. It still has competitive time to kill, still has 10 meters of damage range, good time to kill at 14 meters as well, pretty good recoil. It stands out to me as being the most versatile and pretty much just the best SMG. Like I said, I think this 550 millimeter barrel build that I'm going to give you at the end of the video is going to be pretty much what I think most people should be using right now. All of these guns are very good and competitive, but I just think the Arma stands out. Talk about the Marco a little bit. So the Marco has the best movement speed, but it has really short damage range. It's kind of a trade-off. You either get this good time to kill of 542, then you only get 7 meters of damage range, and then the second drop's only at like 12 meters. So at 14 meters, your time to kill jumps up even more. And then if you don't use that fast time to kill barrel, you use the Imerito low recoil barrel, then it goes all the way up to 602 milliseconds as one of the slower to kill. It's still a good choice. Like, don't get me wrong, 602, like I said, is still pretty fast. You do get 11 meters of damage range, and as I said before, this barrel gives it such low recoil that you can stack all those for either strafe speed or regular movement, whatever you want to build it for. So it is a great choice. I just think the Arma edges it out just a tiny bit still. Next up, we talk about the Blixen a little bit. It has competitive TTK again, 602 milliseconds. It's slower than most of the options on this list, but that's still close. And then with that Johnson barrel, you get 15 meters of damage range, which is really, really huge. The difference between 11 and 15 meters is pretty dramatic. I think you'll have a lot of fights in that damage range. So I feel like I actually think this Blixen edges out the Marco a little bit as well, just because it doesn't really have any downsides. Like, it's just good everywhere. Unfortunately, the one difference is the Marco's going to have better movement, because with this Johnson barrel, the recoil is pretty bad. So you're going to want to stack some at least horizontal recoil attachments. So your Blixen's either going to have slower movement or slower ADS movement than this Marco. So that's the trade-off. You get more damage range, but you're going to have less, mobility and things like that. And then, as I've covered before, for hipfire, PPSH or the Marco Akimbo are both going to be pretty much the only two really good options right now. But then they're not very good at range. So not a lot of people do this, but for small maps, it can be pretty fun to run the PPSH or Marco Akimbo for just pure hipfire. But yeah, I'm probably not going to cover the builds for these. I'm mostly just going to give you builds for the Arma, Marco, and Blixen. But yeah, hipfire, definitely PPSH. All right, so on to recommended builds. The Blixen, I think, is one of the best all-around choices right now for most people. It's going to have great mobility. Has good time to kill. And then obviously it has lots of damage range with the Johnson barrel, which is what I'm going to recommend. So I think recoil booster, Johnson barrel, slate reflector, Strafe angled. So the reason we choose this is because the worst part of the recoil in the Blixen is the horizontal bounce. It can get pretty bouncy as it's going up. So we want to reduce the horizontal portion of that recoil as much as possible. So we do Strafe angled for that and hatch grip. I like subsonic personally. You could use hollow point, but that's going to hurt your damage range a bunch. And then fleet and quick for absolute best mobility. And then something weird about this build, you'll notice I'm not using a stock. That's because if you look at these, like, the trade-offs are pretty dramatic for what you get in a lot of cases for the stocks on SMGs. So with the remove stock, you get movement speed, sprint to fire speed, and aim down sight speed, which is all stuff that you really want on an SMG, but the recoil is already really bad on this because of the Johnson barrel. So the fact that the remove stock just kills your recoil and hurts your flinch resistance, I just don't like that trade-off. Personal preference, you can try it out, see if it works for you still, but personally I just don't think that's worth using in this case because it's going to make you miss shots. The MB barrel helps with hip fire, aim down sight, movement, but hurts your recoil again. I don't want to hurt my recoil. The Johnson Skeletal CR10 barrel helps with recoil and actually helps with movement speed, so this is one to consider for sure. But it hurts your ADS and hurts your sprint to fire, and sprint to fire already doesn't feel great on this for some reason. So that's the only reason I didn't use this stock. If you were going to use a stock with this build, I do think this would be the one to use, because it does help with recoil and it's also going to help with your movement, which is really nice. We don't want to slow down the movement at all. And then the last stock is sustained recoil help, but it hurts your initial recoil and hurts your movement speed. So really, I just think the trade-offs on all these stocks, it might be worth just not using a stock at all. All right, so for the Marco, again, this is very much like the 550mm for the Arma. As far as the barrel goes, the Imerito barrel gives it very, very little recoil. So you can basically stack every other attachment to help with whatever you prefer. So in this case, this is built for ADS strafe speed. So we've got the compact underbarrel, we've got the grooved grip, and the HF folding stock. So this is a full strafe speed build for the Marco 5. Aside from the barrel, we use the Imerito barrel just because it helps with the recoil a bunch. So this is going to be really, really good all-around Marco, especially for controller players, because you're really going to get a lot of that rotational aim assist as you're strafing around. Yeah, this is an absolutely top choice right now as far as SMGs go. But then if you're someone who prefers to run the Marco or prefers to run an SMG as just pure movement speed, because this barrel gives you such low recoil, you can do that as well. So you'd use the Mark 6 skeletal, you'll use taped grip, and then you'll use the Imerito FR stock. So this is going to give you pretty much the fastest movement speed in the game. Just going to feel crazy just flying around the map, and it's still going to be really accurate because of that barrel. So another super competitive loadout here. Extremely similar to the Marco here, the Arma with the Imerito barrel makes it so it has very, very, very little recoil. So you just stack the rest of the attachments to build whatever stat you prefer. One of my favorite ways to run it, even though I'm a mouse and key player, is for full ADS strafe speed. So we've got the compact underbarrel, grooved grip, and skeletal stock. This all helps with ADS movement. And makes it so you can just kind of dodge shots. And then also with the Imerito barrel, you're going to have no recoil. So this is going to be effective out to 30-40 meters if you need it to be. I've had lots of fights where I have this out, and because I'm an SMG and I have good strafe speed, good ADS speed, I'll beat an AR at 40 meters because I just don't miss with this barrel and I can ADS faster than they can. So it's just, overall, this is my recommended gun right now for the vast majority of players. I think this is pretty much the same as what I said in my first video, but just wanted to redo this just to make sure that I covered everything accurately. And then again, just like the Marco, if you prefer movement speed, you can swap over to the skeletal taped grip, and then the whichever stock is going to help with your movement. So the Armaguerra SA folding stock. So this is going to have fantastic mobility. Overall, just a great choice. I would actually probably put quick on there. I accidentally had on hand, but quick is better for SMG builds for sure. And then, like I said, if you want absolutely the best strafe speed SMG in the game would be this with the short barrel. Swap back to the compact underbarrel, swap back to grooved grip, swap back to the skeletal stock. And then the recoil is going to be pretty bad on this with the 72 Kurs and Vital, and we no longer have that low recoil barrel. So I would say just use the regular 9mm 60 round mag rather than the high caliber Kurs mag. So that's going to help your recoil. Time to kills are still very competitive. It's almost no different with the 60 round. So I think this is probably how I would recommend running it with the short barrel. And this is tons and tons of fun. Like if you're somebody who likes strafe speed at all, you should definitely try running this. This is just a crazy fun build. As I said before, the Arma is pretty much the king in terms of time to kill for guns that have high damage per mag and other good SMG qualities as well. So if you use the body 315mm barrel with the Kurs mag and Vital, you get phenomenal time to kill with this build. So the one downside is that the recoil is pretty bad on this. So I use the hand stop and stippled grip for initial recoil, and then either no stock at all or the Armaguerra SA folding. This kind of goes in combination with that stippled grip because this hurts your initial recoil, and stippled is going to help. So that's going to kind of cancel that out. And then obviously the folding is going to give you those SMG qualities of better STF and better movement. It would be okay to use potentially like no stock at all, or maybe even like this heavier stock, this body DA stock to help with recoil. But again, that's going to really slow you down. So it's kind of a trade-off. I feel like the Arma's in a great spot where there's a bunch of different fun builds to use with it that are all viable, and they all have reasonable trade-offs. But overall, I do think the Arma is the best SMG in the game right now. All right, everybody, I hope you enjoyed the video. Pretty long one, but I'm trying to cover things in detail as much as I can, just so you understand the logic behind why I pick what I pick. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you appreciate the content, be sure to drop a like, drop a comment, what you guys think is the best, aside from the stats. I try to put some feel in there as well with like the accuracy stats and things like that. So that's kind of how I bring, more subjective traits into the comparison. But I just think the Arma edges out the Marco and edges out the Blixen by a tiny bit right now. But they're all three fantastic choices, and if one works for you, just use that because it's not dramatically different. But yeah, appreciate you guys all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.